All right, guys, welcome back. Jerk Block Talk. For those of you who don't know why we call this show Jerk Block Talk, it's because if you're a gym owner, you will totally understand this. The jerk blocks are used for everything but fucking lifting weights. Ours is the biggest coffee table you've ever seen in your life. So that's the running joke in our gym, is that jerk blocks always have a bunch of shit on them. Anyway, Jerk Block Talk, I'm Jason Fernandez. We're at CrossFit Rife. And today what we're gonna do is talk about some ways that you can manage teaching complex movements to a group that has a very wide variety of athletes. What I want you to think about is a series of stops where you're dropping athletes off. So for today, the workout for us is a bear complex. So Jess is teaching the class. Bear complex, if you're not familiar, clearly starts with a deadlift if you're gonna take that first one off the floor, hang power clean, front squat into a push press, back squat into a push jerk. So let's take that push press and the push jerk, and let's talk about those two movements. When we would teach that movement, what we would do is we would teach the push press first, then we would work our way into the push jerk. So right now, Jess is going over the progressions for the push press and the push jerk. What I'm gonna tell you is this. What you wanna do is start with the simplest movement, regardless of where you're gonna end. So for instance, let's say the workout didn't have push press in it today. Start with the press, then teach the push press, then teach the push jerk. In the event that you have athletes that can't manage the push jerk, they can do the push press or the press. And essentially what you've done is I've created a series of stops where I'm dropping athletes off at their particular checkpoint, right? So let's go down that avenue for a second. So let's say any number of these athletes that I would have in the class, maybe the push jerk just isn't happening for them today. It's not clicking, they're not understanding it. I would teach them the press and the push press before we got to the push jerk. That time, at that point, I as the coach can determine whether the push jerk is acceptable or appropriate for them. If I think no, I can leave them at the push press progression. I say, hey, listen, we stopped here. That's what you're going to use for the workout. In the meantime, having gone through all three of those movements, what I've done is I've gotten my athletes warmed up, the ones who are going to use those complex movements, and we've worked up to that movement in a logical progression. The reason I bring this up is because what happens a lot of times is coaches take a complex movement and they start there, and what you end up having to do is you have to circle back to the more basic movements. I'll give you another example. If we were gonna do ring push-ups, which we had, I think, last week, instead of just going straight to the ring push-up, because you know probably a large majority of the class is not gonna be able to manage that movement, start with the basic push-up, teach it to the whole class. Right? At that point, I'll probably know who my athletes are who are not going to be able to manage that movement. Okay? At that point, I can drop them off at that first checkpoint. I'll be like, everybody's working on the push-up. We can work on the mechanics, elbows in, hand placement, all that stuff. Hey, listen, now you're going to stay here. Push-up is going to be what you're going to do for the workout. At that point, I can take my more advanced athletes and we can move to checkpoint B, or whatever the more complex movement is. Everybody, we just warmed up on the push-up. Now we're going to move and we're going to go to the ring push-up. Same thing, you could do it on the pull-up. Start everybody with a ring row, get them warmed up. Then we can go to the pull-up. And the point is this, it's more efficient if you teach it in a logical progression, starting with most basic to more complex. It makes the flow of the class a lot easier. And what you're not having to do for some of your newer athletes is I don't have to kind of call them out because they can't do the movement. I can drop them off at their checkpoint before we get to the more complex movement. They don't feel out of place, and everybody else is getting a good warm-up en route to the complex movement they're gonna do. Same thing for muscle ups. If you're gonna have people that are gonna do transitions for a muscle up day, start everybody on the transition. Then you just leave the people that are gonna do muscle up transitions right there working on that. Then you can take your more advanced athletes and move them along to the muscle up. Again, it's just a more logical progression for you to manage that scenario. And at no point do I have to kind of segregate the class, because now I have people, we started here and I have people that are doing the complex movement, and now to say, okay, if you can't do that, basically what you're saying, everybody, is if you suck now, that's kind of what they're going to feel like. If you suck and you can't do this, come over here, right? So start in the other order. Start with most simple and then drop them off there, and then go to the more complex movement after that. Okay? It's going to make more sense to the athletes. It's going to make the flow of your class much, much easier, because I'm not tracking back all the time, right? So essentially, if I have to run some errands in my car, I'm not going to go to the last stop first and then backtrack my way to the one that's closer to me. I'm going to start with the one that's closest to me, and then I'm going to work my way down the line. I'm going to go to the place that's right down the street, and then the place that's a little bit farther than that, and then farther than that, and it's going to make a logical progression for me as the coach. But more importantly, it's a lot simpler for the athletes to understand. We found a lot of success with that, so give it a try. If you have some ideas, post those, and we'll talk about that and we'll address those ideas. But as usual, be better. Try to be a better coach every time you step on the floor. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you have comments, put them in the comments. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.